All right, howdy. Wow. We had much fewer students here yesterday, so the howdy was like, howdy? I did not really understand what's happening. Thank you all for being here. This is our third day now of the Creative Care Conference. We've had a lot of great sessions, workshops yesterday with art therapy, music therapy, and Dungeons and Dragons therapy. All three of those panelists are visiting classes later today, so hopefully you got an opportunity to interact with them if you haven't already. Today, we are going to be beginning our Performing Pain panel. This is actually the original program and structure for the conference when I started conceiving this about a year and a half ago, specifically because a lot of my work focuses on how people create a sense of intimacy through extended co-presence, whether that's like actually spending time in the room together, or doing so in distributed networks and trying to communicate via mixtapes or via, like bands that are touring around the nation, or via groups that are forming around like foreign military bases and things. And like, how do people actually create this sense of connection? And one of my favorite philosophers, Elaine Scarry, specifically describes pain, and she notes that in the context of, well, how many of you have experienced pain? All right. How many of you have experienced, so how do we measure pain?
Not easily.
Right, it's usually like a scale of like what would now be called emoticons. Like, what were they called in the 80s when you went to the doctor's office and it was just smiley faces? Like, I don't know what they were called, but they were, but right, it's just like smiley, less smiley, disgusted, upset, constipated, like having a very bad day, right? That's as sophisticated as we get. And Anicia Palmer, during her workshop the other day, had all the students put clothespins on their ears for 30 seconds, which is painful in its own way. Then she asked for everyone's rating of that pain. And in both of my classes, it ranged between a 2 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10. That is how subjectively different pain is. And Elaine Scarry describes it specifically as, when you are experiencing pain, it is the most real thing in the world. And when you are trying to communicate that to somebody else, it is the most difficult thing in the world, because pain sort of destroys language, which is why performance can be a really interesting way to try to communicate in a slightly different way. I think, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but she says, when you are experiencing pain, you understand certainty. When someone else is experiencing pain, you understand doubt in a very fundamental way. I'm not going to ask about your worst pains. But our panelists today are going to be Houston Carson, Kat Rothman, and Andrew Robler. Did I get the pronunciation right? Cool. All of whom are going to give us workshops on different ways of expressing and integrating and sensitively demonstrating and performing different kinds of pain. Some of that will be fun, some of that will be heavy, and that is the point. So thank you all for being here. We're going to have a 10-minute presentation from each of our guests, and then we'll have probably a couple minutes for questions, and then we'll break for our workshop. The next couple things coming up today, just to give you a sense of the schedule, which is out on the board here, is after our session at 11:15, and we're going to be moving over to Law, the Liberal Arts and Humanities building, into 255, where there will be lunch. So students, if you don't have money, go get free lunch. We got plenty of them. And specifically, we're going to be hearing from several of our alumni from throughout programs in PVFA, whose work kind of is at this intersection of arts and health in one way or another. And they're going to talk about their career paths and how they got to where they're going. That's going to be hosted by Dr. Angie Spalling. And then after that, we're going to have a 1-hour session for what Dr. Jason Harris of the English department is calling expressive narratives. And students like yourselves, your peers, are going to be doing some, reading some creative writing, some short stories, and some poetry about their own interactions with mental and physical health and well-being. And then our final workshop for today is going to be deep listening with our partner, Mary Hanson-Scott, and that's going to be from 3 to 4:30, also over in Law, I'm pretty sure. Is that right, Shipra? Sorry, it's going to be here. It's going to be here. Good. So Most of the things are going to be here, and then that's going to be, lunch is going to be over in the other building. So first up, I'd like to bring up, who did I say was going first? That's Houston. Excellent. And I will go ahead and control your slides. I don't think, because do we have the clicker or not? We did yesterday, but it might have disappeared. But you can just tell me what you want me to play.
For sure, yeah. I'm not much of a slide guy, and so I'm a professional wrestling coach. I'm a retired professional wrestler. I brought some of the pro wrestlers I've trained here with me to be a part of the workshop in a little bit. But with pro wrestling, obviously it's performing pain. We want it to seem real so that we don't have people say that we're the F word. What's the F word in wrestling? Fake. Yeah, it's predetermined, it's choreographed, but while they're watching it, we don't want them to think fake. But at the same time, we're making it real. We have to turn it up to 10 because it's theater, it's theatrics. A trainer told me one time, Houston, no matter if a camera is right in your face and you're wrestling, perform like there's a family in the nosebleeds and that's all they can see. So we have to really open up and express ourselves. Selling and wrestling is just acting and reacting. We overact an action and then the reaction is overacted on the other end and the crowd seems to love it if it's done well. For me, if I was up here talking for 10 minutes, I think it would be boring as far as what I do. So I have a little bit of hype video, a little bit of me wrestling, a little bit of my guys wrestling, and some of our other stars. And then right after that, we have a little piece of the Texas Bucket List series that we were featured on last year because he really puts a good light on us, better than I could do justice for. So let's play the hype video, and then right after that, let's just go right into that Texas Bucket List video. Sweet. All right, now let's do the Texas bucket list to get a little more detail about what you just watched.
We can clap.
I'd say that's performing pain, right? Yeah. Maybe the definition when you Google that, maybe?
Howdy, and welcome to the Texas Bucket List. My name is Shane McAuliffe. Who's ready to rumble? Have you ever wanted to be a professional wrestler? Back in the day when I was acting like the Ultimate Warrior doing arm breakers off my parents' couch, so did I. Now that I'm older, not so much. But that hasn't stopped a unique group of grown adults from living out their dream with Lions Pride Sports in Bryan.
When you first walk into a room full of wrestlers preparing for a match, it's amazing to watch the routines, the preparations, and the camaraderie. Then the bell rings, and it's no holds barred. This is usually a monthly occurrence for the folks at Lions Pride Sports in Bryan College Station, and it's Houston Carson's baby.
We're here to entertain our community.
Originally from Caldwell, Houston grew up in the Brazos Valley, pursuing his wrestling career.
After high school, I tried Blinn College and tried to do my thing there, but all I was thinking about was wrestling school. Unfortunately, after 10 years of wrestling, I had a medical condition that made me stop cold turkey, and I loved it so much, since I was a kid even, that I wanted to teach it. And so we started Lions Pride Sports in 2017.
Houston now focuses his time on helping others achieve goals they never imagined.
I used to wrestle, and I don't even care that I used to wrestle. The way I feel now, giving my knowledge to people and them going and doing it and chasing that neon light, you know, that Broadway sign of WrestleMania, I love it. Yeah, I'm so glad I had to stop wrestling so that I can do what I'm doing now.
Standing at nearly 7 feet tall, one of the stars of Lions Pride is Drake Durden. This menacing mammoth of a man, well into his 40s, didn't get into the ring until a few years ago. And that's because he's busy being a lawyer.
I'm probably known more as the wrestling lawyer than I am Jay Rudinger by some folks here in town, and that's fine with me.
Then there's Mia Friday, another extremely popular wrestler who just graduated high school with an associate's degree.
Outside of the ring, I'm just, I'm a normal 18-year-old girl. I'm shy. I don't really tell anybody, like in high school, like that I do what I do. I just see Mia Friday is a different part of me, I guess.
When not in the ring, Tamia Bertram is your normal 18-year-old pursuing her dream. Well, she's not that normal when you consider she's already wrestled in Japan, worked with famous Texas wrestler Booker T, performs in a band, and is a graphic designer.
My heart is lit on fire that first time that I stepped in the ring. I don't want to make it sound like I'm in a Disney movie, but I really felt like this is what I was meant to do.
She's exceeded every expectation possible. She's passed up every other student in our organization. She's going to be a huge star one day. She's a huge star right now on our level.
When I grow up, I want to be Mia. That's what I tell everybody all the time. She's going to be famous with whatever she wants to do.
I'm so grateful for this moment, and every single opportunity that I get in the ring, I just want to run with it and do as much as I can.
This journey started at a young age for Mia.
I grew up watching it with my dad, but I just took it like a whole step further than how much he loved wrestling, and it just became my obsession. And when I was 10, I was like, I know I want to be a professional wrestler. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life.
So at the age of 13, she signed up at Lions Pride.
I walked in here, not only was I pretty much the only teenager, I was also the only girl. So I'm just, a 13-year-old girl walking in with a room with a bunch of, big jacked men, and I'm like, I want to be a wrestler. But I wasn't intimidated by it. I was just focused on me and wrestling. It's my love, it's my passion.
For her to come in when she was 13 and just shy and awkward, just like every 13-year-old girl is, for her to be who she is now, all I've done is just given advice, but she's done all the work, and I think she is going to take over the world. People use the F word in wrestling a lot, fake.
Oh my gosh, you guys put your bodies through some stuff.
It's, yeah, fake. We bristle at that word. Choreographed is a much more apt term. We go in there, we're entertainers. We know it. If the crowd doesn't like it, we're not doing our job. We're there to give everybody a chance to have fun one way or the other. But, I mean, you take a clothesline, you're gonna feel it the next morning across the chest.
So when people walk in and they see us smacking each other and actually lifting each other and slamming each other, they go, hold on. I thought this was the F word. I thought this was fake. This is amazing.
I love doing no DQ matches. I love doing tables and chairs because that's the one thing that fans, when they see it, they're like, that's not fake.
My parents, they never really knew how real it could get. So when I would come home, with bloody noses and black eyes, they're like, but I thought this was, so it's definitely crazy what we do.
Despite the beatdowns, Jay, Mia, and all the other wrestlers keep coming back to hopefully one day be the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
You can't replicate coming through that curtain with anything else in life. When you come through and your music's playing and you come out and everybody just goes nuts, one way or the other, booing or cheering, that adrenaline rush is hard to replicate doing something else.
When you have people that come in that are in high school, maybe some are in their 30s and think it's too late, some are in their 40s and think it's too late. Some people just want a hobby and some people want to become a millionaire wrestler one day. They all come in here and I try my best with them, and it's taught me a lot about life and a lot about people.
Whenever you start chasing that dream, you can't let anybody or anything get in your way. You can't let your own doubts, you can't let other people telling you can't do this because of this, you can't do this because of that. You just have to tune all of that out and go follow your passion and chase your dreams.
And Campbell, if you just give me like 60 seconds with that slide I gave you, and that way we can move on. But yeah, real quick, what is professional wrestling? It's a form of athletic theater centered around this link that popped up? No. A form of athletic theater centered around mock combat. So we know it's choreographed when we're calling it in the back. Our job is to go out and make people forget about all that for just an hour or so. And then it's storytelling with angles that end with battle scenes in the ring. Just like if you watch Game of Thrones, you love everything and you love the battle scene because why? The battle scene had a meaning. We're not exhibition matches, we're storytelling matches. We are to combat sports. Pro wrestling is like what the Rocky movies are to boxing. Rocky movie has boxing in it, but it has more storytelling than boxing in it. And our biggest goal is to protect each other, performing with pain, while making the fans believe we're in an actual fight. And we just create a live mini-movie with the psychology of protagonist versus antagonist to create emotion. And to create emotion, we have to perform with pain and make people feel like we are really acting and reacting accordingly. But we turn it up just a little bit. That's my time. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Next up, Andrew Robler.
Howdy, everybody.
Howdy.
My name is Andrew Robler. I am a director and producer primarily, although I have done just about every job in theater that can be done. I am a class of 2011, graduated from here when the last theater degree was around. And I am currently based in Houston, Texas. I'm the artistic director and founder of the Octarine Accord, which is Houston's only theater company that's dedicated entirely to speculative fiction, so science fiction, fantasy, horror, that kind of thing. And today we're going to talk about fight, flight, feigning, and fear. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about fight choreography, but we're going to look at it from a different lens because we're talking about health and art today. So I want to talk to you about kind of how I got into fight choreography and some of the skill sets that I have gained over the years and where those come from that have taught me kind of new ways of performing pain. So if you have the next slide. So I have worked for the last 12 years or so in a field called clinical simulation. I was at Texas A&M Health Science Center from 2012 to 2019. I was the founding director of clinical simulation for the University of Houston College of Medicine starting in 2019. So I helped start that medical school during a pandemic. Don't recommend. And then in 2022, I moved down to UTMB in Galveston and was there until February of this year. So what is clinical simulation? If you'll go to the next slide. I describe it as immersive, go back one more. Nope, one more. There we go. I describe it as immersive theater, but for medical students. So essentially, we use a combination of technology and live actors to create simulated medical scenarios for medical students, nursing students, pharmacy students, veterinary medicine students. No, we don't have people playing the animals, but the vets need to learn to interact with their owners, right? And so standardized patients, the humans that we use that we work with to portray these patients and clients that these students interact with has been my focus for the last 12 years or so. If you go to the next slide. So clinical sim uses a bunch of theatrical tools and conventions to create these simulated scenarios. We use a combination of scripted responses and improv on the part of the actors. They need to know enough that they can get their story straight so that we're giving the students the correct information so that they can practice their diagnostic skills, for instance. But we can never anticipate everything that a student is going to say, so we have to have some form of improv. We use a combination of scenic and prop design. So designing a hospital room and other types of props that need to be there for the simulation to feel realistic. We use special effects makeup. We call it moulage in the field, but that's to create things like cuts, bruises, scrapes, bleeds, all sorts of different things that need to seem realistic for the students to interact with and learn how to care for. And then direction and stage management, and I would include fight direction in here as well, because a lot of the same tools that we use when we block fights on stage are essentially dealing with a combination of pain and stress or heightened emotion, which is the same thing that we deal with when we're in pain at the doctor's, right? So a lot of those tools overlap. Go to the next slide. Other things that we use or that we do as standardized patients or as clinical simulationists, we use this training not only to teach students, but also to evaluate students. So this is evaluating students on things like their communication skills, their interpersonal skills, their clinical skills. So how can they, how well do they look in your eyes? How well do they look in your ears? How do they communicate with you when they're doing that physical examination? Stress management, creating intentionally stressful scenarios for students so that they learn how to operate within a stressful environment without cracking under the pressure before it matters for real. Emotion management, similar thing. And if you're interested, I have a TEDx talk on YouTube that's called I'm Proud of Lying to Your Doctor. That is like an 18-minute long kind of overview of everything that we do and how it all works. We also focus on teamwork and interpersonal communication between the team members, not just between the students and the patients. And then bias recognition, so helping them understand how they might be biased against, say, someone that looks like this coming in and asking for pain medication versus someone in a suit and tie coming in and asking for pain medication. So that's what that was for a simulation where we were essentially testing the students on their ability to recognize potential bias that might come into their decision making. I think I have one more slide. Question? Nope, that's it. So today in our workshop, we are going to be talking about fight choreography primarily, but we're going to do it through the lens of taking a hit. So we're going to talk less about the mechanics of this is how you throw a punch, and we're going to talk more about what happens when you're on the receiving end of staged violence and how we can simulate pain and heightened emotion, focusing on our breath first. So that's what we're going to focus on in the workshop in a little bit. Thank you.
All right. Howdy, y'all. So my name is Kat, and I am a director, deviser, and intimacy director. So I am here to talk to you today about what intimacy direction is, why it matters. Intimacy direction and intimacy coordination, these are relatively new fields in live performance and in TV film. It was really catalyzed by the Me Too movement going viral in 2017, and these kind of new ideas of actor safety, increased awareness of coercion that was happening in terms of practice happening and the way that we're making our art. So intimacy, coordination, and direction are there to really help actors move through their work safely while also achieving believability, kind of connecting actually back to what Houston was talking about with wrestling. Very similar philosophies there. Do you mind progressing for me? Thank you. So officially the definition from intimacy directors and coordinators, IDC, they give is that an intimacy director or coordinator is a choreographer, an advocate for actors, and a liaison between actors and production for scenes that involve nudity, hyperexposed work, simulated sex acts, and or intimate physical contact. So acting is a very vulnerable thing. Your body is your instrument. You're really putting yourself out there. So then when we have these hyper-vulnerable situations involving nudity, simulated sex acts, we want to make sure that the actors are able to move through this work as a person who has a job, as a person who has autonomy over their body, and they're able to leave work at work and not essentially be sort of a prop or an object that's moved around to create some sort of storytelling. So consent means that yes or no are equally valid and acceptable options. And that can be really challenging for an actor when you're coming into a situation with all of these power dynamics. You're trying to make your career happen. So you don't want this reputation of being difficult to work with. So historically, it's been really challenging for actors to be able to speak up for themselves and set boundaries and work in a way where they feel respected, they feel that they're a collaborator in these scenes, and again, able to kind of move through the work as a respected colleague. So when we're talking about safety, that's a lot of what we're talking about is the intimacy director or coordinator is this liaison who's there to help with the storytelling, working with the director to achieve their vision, to achieve believability through effective choreography, but doing so in a way where we're also prioritizing ideas of safety and consent for the actors. There is a lot of connection to stunt coordination and the history of intimacy work. This idea that we can take these heightened moments and break them down into movement and timing and something that is consistent and predictable for the actors, but also, again, effective storytelling. And this idea that the choreography actually helps us make better storytelling. Part of that, I think, is really exemplified by this discomfort scale, which also comes from intimacy directors and coordinators. So in general, when we want to make good art, we do want to step into this space of discomfort. We want to challenge ourselves. We want to be vulnerable. But the idea is that if we go too far down here, we hit unsustainable practice. And we want to perform pain, but we don't want our actors in pain. And we certainly don't want to invoke trauma or injury. Again, we're looking for sustainability, especially if we're in a space of live performance and the actor may have to engage in this scene over and over for weeks. We want to make sure that that's something that they can maintain in a way that isn't going to cause ill effects. So part of what we do is work with actors on finding that kind of sweet spot on the scale of discomfort for them, where they're able to step into that vulnerability, but not go too far, right? Our bodies are instruments. You can play a guitar when it's out of tune, but it's not going to sound great. When we're too far into this discomfort zone, our sympathetic nervous system is activated, and we're not able to be present. We're not able to do our best work. We may just feel unsafe. Sometimes also for actors, it's like, I'm worried about my scene partner, because without an intimacy coordinator, maybe we haven't had the opportunity to really communicate to each other. And so I'm concerned that what I'm doing is actually not feeling great for my scene partner, and all these things that kind of pull us out of the scene. So, we're there to help everybody do their best work, be fully present in that moment as their character. And so yes, intimacy directors, we primarily work with actors as well as directors. And again, talking to the director, what is the storytelling that's happening here? So yes, maybe we have somebody who's exposed, maybe we have some intimate physical contact, but what is really happening in the story? What's different before and after this moment? And how can we use the choreography to tell the audience that story in an effective way while also keeping an eye to safety? We could So an intimacy professional is needed for these moments of simulated sex acts, nudity or hyperexposure, intimate physical contact, and then, hey, upon request. So SAG-AFTRA has recently really codified the use of intimacy coordinators on sets, and an actor is able to just request. You don't have to justify or explain why. You know, I've done intimacy direction in scenes where there was no physical contact, but there was some really charged language, and an actor just felt safer and more grounded by having some choreographed movement to ground them into that scene. So there's a lot of gray zone, I guess, is what I'm getting at, and it's really up to what's going to be able to help the performer do their best work again. All right, I'm going to try to. So we usually talk about intimacy work, what we do in terms of these 5 pillars: consent, context. So again, thinking about what are the power dynamics at play, what is the storytelling, communication, making sure that actors have pathways that they can utilize to communicate, with their scene partners, with the director, and then if some boundary is crossed, that there are mechanisms in place to address that, because of course we hope that doesn't happen, but it happens. So how can we address that to move forward and be able to work together? Closure, making sure that actors are able to step into this vulnerable work and then, but also step back out and go about their daily lives, and they're not carrying difficult things, especially if there are scenes involving, say, sexual violence that can be really difficult. We want the actors to be able to remove themselves from that and step out fully out of character to go about their daily lives for their mental health and physical health. And then choreography, so important. That's where the storytelling really comes in. But I think it's really important to think about the fact that there are so many options for the way we tell these stories. So part of my job is to present the director and the actors with options, right? So we want to have this power dynamic shift between these two characters, say, with this moment of physical intimacy. And based on the actor's boundaries, we can have a whole lot of different ways that we can go about that. So that's a huge part of what we do. All right, next one. Okay, great. So, coming back to this idea of consent, like I said, can only exist when anyone can change their mind, when yes or no are equally valid options. And I think this is useful for us just in day-to-day life to be informed about this, whether or not we're engaging in this performance practice. But I love this acronym for consent. Consent must be freely given. So, it's not freely given if the director's do this or you're fired, right? That's not freely given consent, that's coercion. It must be reversible. So again, this idea of options. What feels okay in one moment in rehearsal may no longer be working for the performer in the moment that we're filming, say. So we need to be able to navigate that, because our boundaries can shift from day to day depending on what's going on with us. Again, it's our human body. We are complicated, and we change from day to day. It must be informed. So the actors should also be part of what is the storytelling here? Why is my character removing their clothing? And what specifically is going to be visible to the audience or to the people on set, or what is going to be actually shown on screen, on camera. So really having these specific conversations and coming to the choreography, what is the specific destination, what kind of touch, what's the duration, all of these things to make sure everybody is super informed so they can, again, step into the work with as much comfort and embodiment as possible. And then the E is enthusiastic. I tend to prefer embodied, because sometimes, again, this is vulnerable stuff. We're not going to be like, yay! But we hope that the actors are, able to say, all right, I understand the story. I'm all in. I'm here, and I'm able to be present with it. Okay. Yes, next one, please. Just a couple more. I know there's a lot of words here, but like I mentioned before, actors, this is a job. They should be able to move through this work as a respected colleague with autonomy over their bodies and personage. It's a huge part of what we do that, again, allows everybody to give their best performance. So these are just some of the practices that we utilize when we are engaging in this work. So desexualized language, we want to be clear and specific about what we're looking for. We don't want to. We want to be very clear about destinations for physical contact. We also don't want to just say, hey, just devour her. Yeah. We want to say, okay, what does that look like in actual choreography that the actors can do? So if you're leaving it too open to interpretation, actors are maybe having to draw from personal experience, which is not what we want. Especially if we're at risk of some kind of re-traumatization with this work. So we want to break it down to choreography and something actually physically clear and achievable for them. I think I already talked about a lot of these, but something else that I think is really important is that I haven't really talked about is this idea of boundaries. So intimacy coordinators and directors, a huge part of what we do also is initiating, providing space for these conversations, language not only for the choreography, but for actors to be able to share their boundaries with their scene partners and with us, so that way we know the framework that we're working in. And this idea that boundaries are an opportunity, not a limitation, and that we need to kind of reframe the way we're thinking that. Because we're always working, creating art within some kind of container. So it's just giving us a clear container, and from within there, we can figure out how to tell a great story. I think that's probably the last. Do I forget? Yeah. So if anybody's interested in learning more, getting some training, these are some great organizations that I would highly recommend. My email's also down here, so if you do have questions, I'm happy to engage if you want to learn more about what that might look like. You can just take some classes without going to full certification. There's a whole spectrum there of ways that you can engage with this, and I would highly recommend it. Yeah, I think that's it for me. Oh, just for the workshop, we'll be kind of engaging in some of these practices that if you guys could take with you into your work, how to share boundaries with each other, what elements do we use for this choreography, things like that. So just give you a sense of what does it look like when we try to choreograph something. All right.